Hello. At 8 o'clock we have our live Tonight at 8 webinar where Steve Morton, F4VTF, and John McCulloch, GI4BWM, will be talking about the freedoms and restrictions of the new licence terms and conditions with respect to repeaters, gateways and packet radio. But before that we have an interview which was recorded at last year's RSGB convention where the RSGB General Manager, Steve Thomas, M1ACB, talked to Martin Baker, G0GMB, about the RSGB National Radio Centre at Bletchley Park.
Hello, I'm here with Martin Baker, G0GMB. Martin's a member of my senior team at the RSGB, and he's the RSGB's National Radio Centre coordinator. Hi Martin.
Hi Steve, good to be here with you.
Excellent. Now it is an interesting chat really, because you and I talk about the National Radio Centre all the time, of course, but I think it's a great opportunity for us to tell everybody a little bit of the background of what goes on at the NRC. We're always promoting the NRC, we put it in Radcom and we do everything like that, but it's good to have the behind the scenes chat, I think. Yeah. So I just want to start off with, what sort of visitors do you see at the NRC?
Well, the visitors are very varied. A lot of the visitors are people who come to Bletchley Park for a day out, and that's one of the great benefits for the National Radio Centre being at such a prestigious location. We see anything between 100 to maybe 600 visitors walk through the NRC doors every day, and that could be up to around about 80,000 or more in the year. Obviously we get visiting radio amateurs, not only from the UK but across the world. I mean, American, Australian, Indian, Canadian. You name it, we get a fair number of visitors visiting radios.
Let's just pause and think about that for a second now. 80,000 visitors a year on average. And that's, you're introducing amateur radio or reminding people about amateur radio to 80,000 people a year.
Well, that's true.
I can't think of anywhere else in the world where that happens. Right?
And I find a number like 80,000, you can kind of quote it, but actually, I was sitting the other day watching a football match and they panned around a stadium and they said there were something like 70,000 people there. And when you look around that stadium and see just how many 70,000 is, you realise how many people have been through the NRC.
It's a huge number, isn't it? So tell me a little bit about what we actually have at the National Radio Centre.
Well, we try and do a number of things there. The first thing is, for the visitors who have been to Bletchley Park, it's about giving them a degree of continuity, because they've come to Bletchley, it's a decrypting centre, but none of those messages would have arrived unless there'd been radio intercept operators. So when the visitor first walks in, we try and give them that degree of continuity. Why are we at Bletchley, and the type of equipment that was in use in the 1940s era. But of course that makes a really interesting comparison when you look at modern radio equipment as well. So there's that initial introduction.
So you're trying to have that whole range though, from the history through to the modern, is that right?
Absolutely, and we've got a timeline which talks about the development of varying technologies throughout the years. From the very early days through to space communication. We've got a technology area that explains the basics of how wireless radio works. Importantly, we've got a spectrum display which talks about the different uses of the spectrum, and I think it's really important today because people often are not thinking about traditional radio as you and I might have done, or our mum and dads might have done, tuning the dialing knob up and down. But the spectrum's in use by so many different aspects these days.
Wireless technology is a good term for it, isn't it? Really though, you never know who's going to walk through the door, do you? So if you've got a broad range of things, you can try and direct visitors towards something that will interest them.
And they can relate to as well. Yes, that's right.
Okay. And I know you've gone above and beyond the the typical sort of museum visit, right? So I know there's lots of practical things to see. There's the active radio stations. It's not just one. There's multiple. But you've done some other innovations as well to try and give visitors something interesting to do, and which involves sometimes going around the rest of the site.
Yeah. So I mean, as an example, we developed this Find the Spy transmitter event.
Yeah.
So that's a number of small transmitters that are located around the Bletchley Park site, and families come in, they take a receiver, direction finding. The spy transmitters are transmitting an amateur radio call sign in Morse, so they've then got to listen to the Morse signal, write it down, come back to the radio centre, look it up in qrz.com and answer questions. And it's a great way of introducing people to the radio side that maybe wouldn't have come in necessarily before, and introduce them to things like call signs, prefixes, countries, and
very gently with something that it interests them and a bit of competition. I know you've had instances where two different groups from the same family have been competing against each other.
And we have to make it quite clear this is not there is no running. These transmitters are not hidden in dangerous places.
No.
So we have to.
Excellent. I know you also do some visits for clubs and things like that. I know you've got a separate book for amateurs that visit.
Yeah.
And when I'm over sort of in Dayton or Friedrichshafen, a lot of the international visitors say they absolutely, either they've been to the National Radio Centre and they love it, or they're planning on coming, and that's one of the reasons they want to go. But more closer to home, then club visits and things like that.
Yeah, so we get some clubs that visit during the museum opening hours. And that's absolutely fine, because remember, RSGB members can download their free entry voucher, and that gets them not just to the radio centre, but it also gets them to the whole of Bletchley Park, which is a huge members' benefit. But some clubs want to actually get some more hands-on time and get a closer affiliation with what's going on, and then we will organise private evening visits for a club. Not just radio clubs, but we have Scouts, Guide and Cadet groups that will come in the evening.
And we even have YouTubers coming in to do live streaming.
We did.
This last week.
We did indeed.
We've had somewhat of a busy week, let's be honest. But I think was it Wednesday? I think it was Wednesday, wasn't it? We did the live stream. So GB3RS was on the air from the National Radio.
And wasn't that amazingly popular? I mean, it was just pile-ups that were coming in.
The two guys that were running it kept saying we didn't expect the pile-up to be that big.
Absolutely.
And, I think we did. Because to be fair, GB3RS, during the normal operations, is there as a demonstration. We don't actively sort of work numbers of people or anything like that.
No, but
it's there to show people, isn't it?
It is, but with the new licensing conditions, it does mean we can actively get people involved in the radio. Of course, we were always able to get them to pass greetings messages under supervision, but now, of course, they can actually run the QSOs themselves. And we try and manage that as best we can. It's not for everybody. Can you imagine when you first started and first QSO, most of us were really mic shy.
I can think back quite a while, but yes.
but that's when we got the license. So you imagine a person who's just walked in for the day.
No, that's right.
So they can be really quite mic shy, so they need a little bit of help and feeding.
But I've seen people, when I've been there, fascinated by things like QO100. And you use that to explain a little bit of the science as well, don't you?
We do, and it's great because first of all you can say to somebody, has your voice been into space? Have you talked through a satellite before? And so therefore there's a little element of excitement about that. But then of course they hear the delay of the signal coming back, and that's a great opportunity to talk about the speed of electromagnetic waves. Now, of course, sometimes we can have a little bit of fun with the visitors because we will say, well, the satellite's that far up, and what do you think the delay might be, and what's the speed of electromagnetic? Because that's a great way with students that come in that are maybe studying physics or similar science subjects at school or college or university. You know, they're quite quick to pick up about the speed of electromagnetic waves.
And then you put them on the spot. I've seen you do it, and see if they can do the calculation at the time.
Yes, indeed.
Excellent. But I want to come back to, you never know quite who's going to walk through the door, do you?
Yeah.
And I know you have lots of people with history and knowledge and things like that. You have other radio amateurs. The whole, pun very much intended, the whole spectrum of visitors.
And that makes it interesting, because we then have to be a little bit careful about how we talk to these people, because you don't want to start in a very simplistic way only to find that you've got a very knowledgeable person coming. But also, on the other hand, you don't want to talk too high a level to a visitor who knows nothing. So
but
there's
I know
a lot of gut feel about this.
You've had lots of people over the years who've come in with little snippets of history for Bletchley Park as well, haven't you?
And we've had people bring in where they found artifacts in their father's or grandfather's lofts, and then they bring them in and say, well, do you know what this is, or how did that work?
One of the biggest attractions, and I know because you and I both speak to Bletchley Park and the management team there, and all of the visitors that come in, is they really appreciate the conversations with the volunteers that we have there, because they're very knowledgeable as well. They're all hugely enthusiastic about greeting the visitors.
Knowledgeable, passionate.
And so we go above and beyond what you might call the modern museum, where you press the button and you watch a video, and, you know, great displays, and you know that we've got some of that, but actually having that personal interaction with people, that really pays dividends, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, very much so. It means you engage with the visitors and you can inspire them, and so often they want to know that much more.
But the feeling that I get whenever I go there is those volunteers, they absolutely love doing that. They love meeting the people, and I hear the same from the visitors. And you got an award recently, I think.
Yeah, we did. We got a TripAdvisor award for being one of the top 10 sites across the world for visitor reviews.
So again, let's do that. Let's pause. You get 80,000 visitors a year. TripAdvisor are saying it's a fantastic place to come to. And we're talking about something that's showcasing amateur radio, right? Nowhere else in the world, I've said it before, nowhere else is doing that.
Nowhere else is doing it. And you know what, in some respects, the most kind of inspiring thing is it's the Americans which say we have nothing else like this, and, you know, and to hear them say that.
Absolutely. They want to come, definitely. When the ones at Dayton, as I said, they want to come. So I know you're always, well, it takes, is it 65 volunteers you've got
We've
now?
got more than 65 now, So we're open every day of the week. We try to have between 3 and 4 volunteers on duty each day. Some come in once a month, most come in once a fortnight, some come in once a week, but to do that it needs a very strong and very dedicated team of volunteers.
So we're always looking for volunteers that are very keen, because there's usually quite a turnover. But we're always looking for volunteers to do that, and we would encourage anybody that wants to volunteer and is good with people and wants to share that enthusiasm.
And that's the thing. You don't have to be hugely knowledgeable.
No.
You have to be enthusiastic. You have to be able to engage with the visitors. And one of the great things the volunteers do is they enjoy the camaraderie of working with other knowledgeable people, and they learn. Amateur radio is such a diverse hobby that you can learn from your fellow volunteers.
I know there's some competition between the different teams as well on the different days as to...
Oh yes, one class is themselves the A team, the next is the A+ team.
Absolutely, brilliant. Okay, Martin, it's been fantastic talking to you. Here, when we've had the opportunity to sort of share publicly all the work that you do. So a huge thank you for what you do and the volunteer team that works with you. I think the whole amateur radio community appreciates it.
Well, that's very kind, thank you. But we really appreciate all the work the RSGB does to support the NRC and to promote amateur radio.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that interview was recorded at last year's RSGB convention, and the opening hours of the NRC have just been extended by an hour, and so will now close at 5 p.m. each day. Also bear in mind that RSGB members can download a free entrance ticket to Bletchley Park. For more details, please visit rsgb.org/NRC. You'll also find many other videos on the RSGB YouTube channel in the About the RSGB playlist. Tonight's webinar, the freedoms and restrictions within the new license terms and conditions with respect to repeaters, gateways and packet radio, will start shortly. Hello and welcome to Tonight at 8 from the RSGB. A year ago, Ofcom radically updated the amateur radio licence in the UK, and as well as major changes to individuals' licences, there are also quite a few changes made to the terms and conditions which apply to repeaters, gateways and packet radio. Well, joining us to explain these changes and also answer live questions afterwards are Steve Morton, F4VTF, and John McCulloch, GI4BWM from the ETCC. Welcome to Tonight at 8, both of you. John, could you give us a quick overview of what you'll be going to share with us this evening?
Thank you, David. I'm the Northern Ireland Regional Manager for the ETCC, and Steve is our Spectrum Manager. And tonight we want to highlight what freedoms the new licence gives you in the world of repeaters, datacoms, etc., and also very importantly to point out what you cannot do.
Okay, that'll be really useful. Thank you. So before we start, if you are watching this on Monday, the 2nd of March, then this is live and you can ask questions or make comments on either YouTube chat or BATC messaging at any time during the presentation or straight afterwards. Please include your first name and call sign if you have one within every message. And note that you can make this video stream fill your screen on most devices, usually by double clicking on the picture or pressing the full screen button. So now let's go back to John and Steve to find out more about license changes for repeaters, gateways and packet radio.
Okay, good evening everyone. At the time the Ofcom consultation on the new licence was launched back in June 23, I was serving as RSGB President and was closely involved in discussions both within the RSGB and with Ofcom. Right through to the publication of the final documents in February 2024. The extent of the regulatory relaxation exceeded expectations and represented a significant once-in-a-generational change to our licensing conditions. This webinar looks at the major changes affecting repeaters, data communications and gateways, as well as the new frequency coordination processes introduced to meet Ofcom's requirements. The ETCC team drew on their extensive experience and expertise and rapidly got to know the implication of these changes And we were also greatly assisted by our in-house webmaster, Colin, GM8LBC, who undertook substantial redevelopment of our online systems and forums. Our Spectrum manager, Steve, who's going to speak to you now, played a central role throughout the process. So Steve will now guide you through the changes, and I will be available with him to take questions at the conclusion of the presentation. Enjoy.
Thank you, John. Good evening, all. I am Steve Morton, G8SFR, and also known as F4VTF for my sins. And yes, the freedoms and restrictions. Freedoms is one thing, restrictions is something else, but we'll try and go through those bits through the course of the presentation. So who am I? Here I am. The photo is from some years ago, I hasten to add. Lost a bit of hair since then, but there we go. Licensed in 79 as G8SFR, still am. And as a French call sign since 2019. I've been resident over here in France since 2010. And although I've been a volunteer since March 94, I've continued in a volunteer role ever since, really, because these days everything being online basically means I can continue to contribute even at a distance, as it were, sort of taking an outside look at the world, as it were, at times. So these days I'm responsible for processing all the NOV applications, now FAC applications, for simplex gateways, repeater links, packet radio stations, and they all come up for review at some stage. Not every 12 months now, every sort of 3 years or thereabouts. It varies a little bit. And the numbers have expanded somewhat, but more on that later. I also assist with frequency assignment of voice repeaters, particularly UHF ones in UK. And it's basically that my RSGB role is more or less a continuation of what I used to do for work, for a salary. Started off my working career with the Foreign Office. I'm originally from northwest of England, as you might be able to tell from a slight hint of an accent occasionally. I then worked for RA and later Ofcom, but only for a short time. And then my last job was with DSTL, the Defence Scientific and Technology Laboratory, which is part of MOD. I was the illustrious Spectrum manager for about 4 to 5 years or so. They hadn't had one before, and it was up to me to sort of establish myself as being the person, as it were. All boring paperwork stuff, though, but there we go. Right. So hopefully we're going to go through the license terms and conditions issued by Ofcom 2 years ago now. See what you can and can't do within the terms of the license with regards to gateways, repeaters, and packet radio. There's an awful lot of other bits and pieces in the license, call signs, club call signs, etc., which I won't cover. I wouldn't claim to be an expert in those areas. That's subject to a wider review, really. Restrictions placed on foundation and intermediate license holders. Whereas full can do more or less anything and everything, they are foundation and intermediate license holders are tied down a little bit. And when do you need to contact ETCC? What can I do without bothering Steve and the rest of the gang? And what are the advantages of contacting us? And how do you actually go about coordinating your station operation? I'll cover why you need to do that in a bit, and what the responsibilities are if you have an FAC, or Frequency Assignment Certificate. So who can do what? Now, I actually came up with this table because I wasn't entirely clear initially, because the license splits it up into separate paragraphs, and each paragraph deals with either a beacon or a gateway or a repeater, and it also splits some of the paragraphs into up to 5 watts, 5 watts to 25 watts, etc., etc., etc. So you had to sort of go through the fine print a bit to try and work out who could do what, because it wasn't the same at all types of service. That's the bits on the left-hand side coming across, and the power levels in the downward direction. So, for instance, the keen-eyed will spot that repeaters can only be intermediates or full license holders only, not foundation at all. Whereas foundation, intermediate, and full appear in the other 3. And then similarly, when you get to 5 to 25 watts, intermediates can only do data stations, packet radio in other words, and beacons. They can't do a repeater at 5 to 25 watts. And all gateways are limited to 5 watts. So there you have it. There are the odd repeater above 25 watts, but they are on NOVs, and they tend to be only short-term RAINet type things, so not your everyday sort of thing. So we have that wonderful table, which I've actually seen copied in a few places, but I never put a copyright on it, so there we go. Now, in the guidance notes to the license published by Ofcom, there's an error in it. They've acknowledged the error in 4.5.4, but as yet they haven't updated it. I did check it the other day. So please adhere to your license conditions. Right, if I go back one, the error is in repeater 5 to 25 watts. They added in intermediate as well as full and club. Intermediate shouldn't have been included in the guidance notes. So there we go. And it also states in the license that for stations with an ERP of between 5 and 25 watts, you have to obtain a call sign via ETCC. However, we will issue call signs to stations below 5 watts, and I'll come to the reasons behind that in a little while. So you're not stuck with having to use your own call sign all the time. So a frequency assignment certificate, FAC for short, has replaced the notice of variation. The notice of variation varied your license, whereas an FAC doesn't change your license at all. It just basically gives you assurance that you're not going to cause interference to other band users or whoever, and you are, your use of that frequency has been logged and all the rest of it. As I mentioned earlier, NOVs are still issued by Ofcom in a few cases, and you can almost count them on one hand at any time. Ofcom now given license holders far greater freedom with location of packet mailboxes and simplex internet gateways. Previously, they all had to be at the main station address, i.e. basically where you lived. Whereas now, remote sites are now permitted. Conditions apply, of course, but the details of those conditions are contained within the license under the auspices of unattended operation. So in terms of flexibility, you now have the ability to run your Raspberry Pi mailbox or whatever, powered by solar power or wind power, on a mountaintop if you so wish. As long as you can shut it down within 2 hours, you're in business. I wouldn't recommend putting internet gateways on mountaintops, though. They tend to suffer from hidden terminal problems, but anyway, whatever. And Similarly, applications for 4 meters and 70 SEMS no longer require frequency clearance with the primary user. If you recall, we are secondary users of 4 meters and 70 SEMS. That's the 70 meg band and the 430 to 440 meg band. And so that has given us a lot more freedom to assign frequencies in 4 meters and 70 SEMS. And now you can do unattended operation, whereas previously you couldn't. And similarly, you can now run your internet gateway or your packet station on 4 meters or 70 SEMS without being stuck with problems and whatever. We used to issue stuff on 4 meters and 70 SEMS, but if you went out of the house, you had to shut it down. So you basically couldn't take the dog for a walk and talk back through your own gateway, putting it simply. So that is another bonus, if you like, along with the flexibility over location. So it's important to note what is the difference between a repeater and a gateway, and pulling the definitions that Ofcom have used. An amateur radio repeater is a device that receives an amateur radio signal and retransmits it, whereas a gateway is a radio device through which amateur radio equipment can be connected to a non-amateur network, such as the internet. That basically means that gateways receive RF and they actually retransmit it on the internet, or stuff they receive on the internet, they retransmit on RF. What they don't do is what they receive on RF gets retransmitted instantaneously or with a slight delay back out on RF. That's not a gateway, that's a repeater. And I've added this note: Tetra gateways, as the common term is used, unless they're configured differently, they're actually considered to be repeaters, not gateways under the sort of definition above. So you just have to be careful about how it's configured. Now, this, if you recall, hits the foundation licensee, because a foundation licensee can run a gateway, can't run a repeater. So if they want to use a simplex Tetra gateway, in inverted commas, they have to be configured as a gateway, i.e. what it receives on RF gets just sent to the internet. What comes out of the internet comes out on RF, and it doesn't just keep transmitting what it hears. So coordination, that Ofcom make a point about saying the licensee is able to must be able to demonstrate that reasonable steps have been taken to minimize the risk of a data station, gateway, or a repeater causing undue interference to other authorized uses of radio. Provide evidence of this if requested by Ofcom. I've actually combined the sort of statement, because that paragraph basically appears about 3 times through the license for data station, for gateway, for repeater, but it's basically the same wording. The point of this is your operation of your station will fit in with your near neighbors, as it were, be them repeaters, be them gateways, be them packet stations, or whatever. But also on the secondary bands, that our operation will fit in with whatever the primary user suddenly decides to make use of the band. They won't necessarily tell us what they're doing, where and when, but given the current things in the news, anything is possible, as I found out today. But we won't go into details on that. But yeah, so anything that we do is challengeable. Now, it's obviously preferable that you don't suddenly get hauled over the coals for interfering with someone, an Ofcom coming to knock on your door and what have you. So we do our best that in the cases of interference, ETCC will help you get over that issue, be it change frequency or whatever. So coming on to the advantages of using ETCC to actually help coordinate your station and fit in with Ofcom's requirements. These days, the form that we ask you to fill in on the website is a much simpler form. I remember going back over the last 30 odd years of it almost wanting your inside leg measurement before you did it. And of course, 30 odd years ago, it was a paper form which got sent to me and I had to manually interpret people's handwriting and all the rest of it. So that used to take some time. These days it's a bit quicker, of course. So by filling out the simple form, we'll help you to coordinate your station to avoid undue interference. Now, you might suggest a frequency, but you might not be aware of a use of that frequency because the station's currently off air or something like that. So we might come back and say, but we think this is a better frequency or a clearer frequency. You might want to check it or whatever. And we'll go through what you've submitted in some detail. So we've got decades of experience. Basically, we're all old fogies, myself included. There we go. But a lot of us have all got, decades of experience in radio, which is, essential, if you like. And we'll all have, because the members, the ETCC members are spread around the country and around UK in general. So we'll all have a fairly good geographical knowledge as well, where are the hills and ridges and things that help shield you from, a sort of adjacent station, as it were. We'll have obviously extensive knowledge of the existing stations and their coverage. Not all coverage maps are publicised. We have access to them as sort of team members, as it were. And over the years, I've built up a database of gateway coverage maps as well, because those don't get generated because there's just so many of them. And as I say, if there are problems, ETCC will quickly try to resolve the issues without having to get Ofcom involved. In other words, we'll try and beat them to their own game, in other words. So before they get informed or they actually sort of get in their car and try and find you, in my view, we'll most have the problem solved in most cases. So how do you actually go about coordinating your station? So you've decided you're going to coordinate it through ETCC and you want to sort of go forward. So there are certain things that you need to decide on when you're actually processing the form. Things like call signs, deciding on the level of publicity for your station. Before you come to us, it's a good idea to make sure that your license has been recently revalidated. And we ask you for the license number. It's best to always include the full number, including the /n bit at the end, if you have revalidated your license, or if you've changed address. It'll always be incremented gradually, sort of thing. Some people are still going around with the original ones issued sort of 10 or 15 years ago. They've forgotten to do it, sort of thing, but there we go. And close down requirements. I'll come on to that in a bit more detail in a bit. So one thing I ask is you take care filling in the form. I quite often get applications for what looks like a gateway, but it's got a repeater call sign and a repeater frequency. And I'm going, well, what is it you're applying for? They've just thrown some answers at the form and hope it'll pass muster. So we end up have to go back again and say, what is it you're applying for? Please try better or something. Not quite. So for all types of operation, repeater gateway data station, Ofcom do not require you to use a specific call sign. If your ERP is less than 5 watts, you can use your own call sign or a club call sign. That is your preference. However, after the license change 2 years ago, and we had this flood of gateway applications specifically, where people were just applying using their own call sign. Fine. Except the people kept contacting, is your gateway for personal use only, or is it for general use? I went, what do you mean? Well, all the other ones are using MB6 or MB7 call signs. Yours is just using your own call sign. I'm not sure if yours is available. Can I use it? Can't I use it? So we have devised a method of that you can request a call sign for all types of stations, including those under 5 watt CRP. You just use the 5 to 25 watt part of the form, but obviously you put the 5 watts as being the ERP, and everything else just falls into place. For stations with an ERP of between 5 and 25 watts, it's an Ofcom requirement to use a call sign allocated to you by RSGB. However, that can still be your own call sign, but you've coordinated it through us, and you've been allocated a club call sign to use with it, or you are the holder of the club call sign or whatever. You might think, all those call signs, right? So they do break down into sensible divisions. There are some new ones, but predominantly they're not much different from what we had a couple of years ago. I won't go through them. I'll just leave them on the screen for a little while. But GB3+3's beacons, GB3+2, GB7+2, they're repeaters of some sort or another, voice repeaters. GB7+3 is a packet mailbox. MB0+3 is a little bit different. I'll come on to that in a bit. MB4 and MB8 we haven't allocated for use yet, to be decided. MB5+2 again, additional mixed mode repeaters, and then we've got these few of these little oddball ones. MB6+2 is a digital voice gateway. MB7I+2 is an analog gateway. MB7N+2 is a packet node, so there's no mailbox. MB7P and 2 letters is a packet pager, and a few others down. MB7U+2, of course, is APRS, iGates and digipeaters. There are still a few MB7U +1 and MB7V+1. They eventually might become MB7U+2, but they're still valid and still around. So that's a big long list, and I don't expect anyone to memorize it. I even have to look it up occasionally. So the designations for GB3+2 and GB7+2, one's notionally analog, the other one's notionally digital, but there was never any strict law applied to them, so they've got a bit mixed over times. There may be times when you want to use your own call sign or club call sign for the higher power. You enter that call sign in the requested field when applying, and we will issue it. The MB0 call sign plus 3 letters afterwards, we can reject the 3 letters you chose if they contain or relate to offensive language or inappropriate content. The primary use for experimental and temporary systems. we have a few of these around already where people are experimenting with propagation beacons and things, but they can be for sort of short term. We'll issue it for a year, come back to you after a year and say, how's it going? Do you want to regularize this as a normal station? And then in accordance with Ofcom policy, we can't commence a suffix with a Q or a Z. People have got caught out by that, but there we go. You might wonder, why do we have all these different call signs? It's basically so that the end user, not you that's running the station per se, but the user out in the field, maybe someone visiting your area, finds the signal on a particular frequency. They're not entirely sure what that station is, but from the call sign, they can have a fairly good idea about what service that station is providing, be it a voice repeater, be it a gateway, etc., etc. So we're quite, I'll say, use the word strict in regards to what call sign we will issue you for various things. We won't just, if you come to us and say, I want an MB7MOR for my name or something. No, sorry, we don't issue those. And if it's a gateway, it's going to be an MB7I. If you think about it, with 2 letters at the end of it, that gives us 600 and something combinations of letters, and we've never quite we've only got 500 gateways in total, both digital and analog. So we're a long way off sort of reaching the limit, as it were. So another thing that used to be a bit of a thorny subject, what level of publicity do you go for? You have the choice on the sort of up to 5 watts level on the form of public, restricted, or no information is shown. 5 to 25, it's just the first 2, effectively. So public, you're basically happy to share everything. And if you look on the website, you'll see the name, the call sign, the type of station, the frequencies used, location information, blah, 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 blah. Restricted truncates that a bit. So there's no mapping, the call sign of the station and of the keeper, but not their name. The type of station is there, the frequencies used, and there's unrestricted locations. So instead of IN96IV, it would be just IN96. It just makes it a bit more vague, if you like. So you roughly know whereabouts it is in the country, but not the town and a fairly big area. And then secret, if you like, is available on request for own call sign stations. And that basically only shows the fact that the call sign is in use. No information about frequencies, no information about type of station, etc., etc. There aren't many of those, I must admit. There's quite a few restricted, but the majority of them are public. After all, it's in the interest of you, if you want other people to use your gateway or repeater, that you make the information available for them to be able to use it, sort of thing. Now, close down requirements are detailed within the license. For all types of operation, the licensee must be capable to close the station down within 2 hours of being required to do so by Ofcom. Equipment sited away from your main station address, that wonderful phrase again, must be labelled with your Ofcom license number. How they then translate that into contacting you, I don't know, but they'll have an address for you, if nothing else, and an email address, of course. So ETCC no longer requests your phone number. It's an optional thing if you want to put it on the form, but we don't insist on it. And or we no longer request your close down procedure. That's now part of the license. We're not interested. So the only things that we're interested in is to coordinate your application. The stuff that's part of the license, that's between you and Ofcom. No, Ofcom don't stipulate how close down is achieved, because that's going to vary on where the station's located and stuff like that. In the past, we've recommended some form of remote control power switch, either linked by Wi-Fi or GSM, so a mobile phone type device. Those are still freely available, relatively cheap, relatively reliable, and does allow you to go to Spain on holiday and be able to switch your station off remotely. Although these days there's no stipulation on how active your station is, so there's no real issue with turning your station off for the whole duration of your holiday, should you wish. Might cause a few angst phone calls and answer phone messages from users, but not our problem. So it's got easier because it's now actually within the license, and so the onus is on you, really. We won't get hung up about not having 6 people and their phone contact details and all the rest of it anymore. So coming towards the end, the responsibilities of the FAC holder, fairly simple from our point of view. Basically just keep us up to date with status updates about your station. If you go to the website, which is the picture in the middle, there's the forms page, and there is a sort of keeper update option on there, and you can just do a quick update at any time you want. So if you are going on holiday, you don't have to tell us why the station's going to be off or when it's coming back on again. You just inform us that the station's off air. That'll then be reflected on the website that it's currently not operational and all the rest of it. But I do ask that you keep a note of the review date that's on your FAC. They're typically 3 years from when they were issued, but you'd be surprised how quickly 3 years passes. So please put a reminder in your phone or your electronic calendar, or if you're old school like me, you put one in your Filofax. There we go. Yes, I still use one. But we've all got mobile phones, and even mobile phones going back to the 1990s had some form of electronic calendar in them. Now, okay, most people might change their phone within the 3 years, but hopefully you will transfer forward the calendar information or stick it on your shack wall along with your printed out NOVs and FACs like wallpaper. So what do we do apart from what I've been talking about this evening? Well, that comes into the first one, really. We receive and scrutinize. That sounds hard, sort of detailed stuff, doesn't it? We advise on proposals in respect of repeaters, gateways, datacom systems, making sure that the details are correct, and what have you. Any of those proposals that need to go to Ofcom for clearance, such as 23 SEMS and applications above 25 watts, we have to make sure that they are, accurate, if nothing else, because if they reject it, it comes back to us and we have to go through the whole cycle again. So it's imperative we get it right first time. We have an ongoing sort of discussions with Ofcom and other organisations as required, and we obviously represent the society in our own committee at clubs and radio rallies and events like this. I've done one or two live streams. I've also done sort of live on air type Q&A on Echolink and All-Star and all those sort of things. So I try and do those every 4 to 6 months or so, because they're great, because you actually get in contact with people you've only had email contact. I don't actually get to talk to these people in a face-to-face scenario very often. So those are great from feedback point of view as well. So if you want to find out more, the ETCC website is ukrepeater.net, and on the website you will find our ETCC guide, which is a longish document. I will put my hand up to that, but it does tell you how to fill out the forms, and it does give you some hints and tips, if you like, on how to calculate your ERP, for instance, how to go about filling out a form, what the whys and wherefores of, and all the rest of it, what call signs to pick, and all that sort of thing. A lot of the stuff you've already seen this evening has come out of the guide. We do have a Discord server, which is like a chat forum type thing. Sadly, it has a very complicated looking address. I can't change that, but that's very useful for initial discussions, if you like. If I'm thinking of putting on a repeater in such and such an area, what do I need? And before one of us jumps down on you and says you need to fill the form in, someone's going to give you some clues on the cost of filters and the cost of duplexes and antennas and all this sort of stuff. Yes, it's no small undertaking putting on a repeater or a gateway. There's lots of steps to it. I've also added in the radio site engineering best practice guide. It's based on, I think it's based on MPT 1331 or something like that, way back in time, in terms of its original age. But it's got lots, and of course it's been brought up to date with lots of hints and tips, not only on radio engineering stuff, but health and safety, I'm afraid, and all that type of thing. But it's worth a look if you are considering putting something onto a remote site, or a site that you're going to be potentially paying rent on, and the site owner is going to stipulate on you that you meet best practice. And that's going to be where they're going to get the information from, I suspect. So it's always worth looking at. Also, if you're putting an amateur station on a commercial site, you might find that there's more problems with interference from other site users than you originally planned on. It might have worked okay at home, but put it on a very busy site, and you suddenly find yourself suffering with other problems. You might need to add some extra filters and stuff. But there we go. So that's enough from me. I think that's my last slide. It is. So back to you, David, or back to John, I think. And
okay, thank you very much, Steve and John, for your presentation this evening. Now, if you have got any questions or comments, if you ever wondered how to set up a repeater, these are two of the best people to help you. Just share them now on BATC messaging or YouTube chat, depending on where you're watching this. And please don't forget to include your first name and your call sign within every message. That really helps me sort all of these questions for you. So we're going to start off. We just had one in, actually. I don't know the call sign, but the YouTube name is Making Radio Waves. Question that popped into a club discussion. What's ETCC's response to hotspots in the setting be changed from private to public? That's what's written. I hope that you can understand that. Either John or Steve, can you take that?
I can take that. Yeah, a hotspot is generally fairly low power anyway. And so it comes into the operation of a public gateway under 5 watts, running under your own call sign. Fine, go ahead with it, no problem. Obviously, There are a couple of 70 SEMS frequencies reserved for hotspots without an FAC being issued, and I'd recommend you use them because you've got fairly limited coverage anyway. So rather than interfere with an existing gateway in your area, it's best to use the hotspot frequencies. And off the top of my head, I think they're 434 dead and 438.8, but don't quote me. It's in the band plan.
It's in the band plan. I was just going to ask you where to find that, whether that was the ETCC documents or website or band plan, but the band plan
on the RSGB website, I think.
Yeah, we did actually also. I'm just trying to find that message from Andy 2E0REE, who says, "How about if you set up an all-star node?" Excuse me. I think that's probably in context. That's probably about 20 minutes ago when you were saying something about it.
All right.
I don't know if you want to add any notes about that, because somebody on YouTube chat has also tried to help. They said you don't need a call sign or frequency allocation for that. That's what someone tried to assist Andy. Have you got any thoughts on that?
If it's got a radio connected to it, it's going to need a frequency, isn't it? So if they're wanting to run some sort of server, doesn't come under our remit in a way, because it's on the internet. It's not on radio. That may be
what the person trying to help, which was MI7DJT coming back, said. But anyway, Andy, if that hasn't answered you, if you can put a complete question, I'll be very happy to read it to Steve and to John to try and help.
I can always nip back onto the comments later on or something. But anyway.
Yeah, sure. Okay, that would be great. Thank you very much. John, just a question really that hasn't been asked here, but I understand there can be problems due to 12.5 kilohertz channel spacing or recently. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah. Bottom line is, David, I think it's about 30 years ago, the IIRU Region 1 adopted a 12.5 kilohertz channeling plan on 2 meters. And the problem is a lot of people do not have 12.5 kilohertz rigs even to this day. In fact, many rigs out of the box to this day are still 25 kilohertz. And even if they have a narrow switch on them, it may reduce the transmit deviation, but it doesn't reduce nor the receiver bandwidth. Problem that this causes is if we put a repeater on 12.5 kilohertz away from an existing repeater, people using 25 kilohertz rigs will hear it, and also if they're using 25 wide deviation transmitters, they'll splash into it. So just please be aware, keep your deviation down. Even if your rig has a narrow switching, try and reduce your deviation. And if you haven't narrow receive filters, you're going to have to put up with some interference, I suppose, is the bottom line. You anything to add to that, Steve?
Yeah, it's become a major issue in some areas. Where we can, we try to avoid overlapping coverage areas of adjacent channel repeaters and gateways. But it's not always possible. There's always someone that's going to be on a hilltop somewhere that can hear both stations, and so they're going to, in that situation, unless they use a directional antenna, of course, they're going to suffer some form of interference from either side.
Repeater receivers are inevitably 12.5 nowadays, so the receivers should be fine, but your rig is the important point.
It was the IARU conference in 1996 in Tel Aviv, I think, and it was then adopted in the year 2000. So it's 26 years on now, and still they haven't got round to it. But there we go.
Thank you both very much for that. By the way, Steve M1ACB has put onto the website the fact that there are complete band plans, of course, which I'm sure everybody knows, but it's at rsgb.org/band plans, so you can get all of the details of the frequencies that you can use on that. Most people, I guess, would say that the license conditions last year, just over a year ago now, just almost on the nail, February 25.
24.
24 was it? It was 2 years then. Okay. But it's taken, I guess, some of us a while to realise that. But most people would say they were changes for the better, in that most people got a bit more of something or got more freedom to do things. So have you seen as a committee more people make more applications in that time?
I have the evidence.
Yeah, Steve is a gateway evidence. Hey, what is it? 500 the other day, Steve?
It's now 503. It was 269, an increase of 87%. Packet has gone from 254 to 435, an increase of 72%. Repeaters have only gone up a small amount. They've gone from 741 to 835, only 14% increase. But we were pretty well covered for repeaters anyway. With gateways, because remember, both packet and gateways were restricted. Gateways were restricted to full licensees, with the dispensation that intermediates could also apply, but at any time it could have been taken away. But packet was full licensees only. And then 2 years ago, the floodgates opened. And yes.
So it has made
I wouldn't like to go through that first 2 weeks again.
Wow. Well, but that's good news for the hobby. We're sometimes used to seeing all the doom and dismay, with the internet and taking over and everything else, and and people not doing so much on the radio. Well, that's proof that they certainly are, and that the hobby is hopefully, which is I think Ofcom's a lot of their rationale behind making a lot of the changes was to modernise it and update it, wasn't it, and give people a little bit more freedom in to reflect modern technology.
Because of the changes 2 years ago, 70 SEMS repeaters are pretty much the same as they were before, and they haven't really changed that much. 2 meters we've expanded with another 2 channels for low power repeaters at the bottom end of the repeater band plan. Gateways we have had to expand because quart into a pint pot, you can't get away from it. So 2 meters now has more gateway channels than it had before 2 years ago. And 70 SEMS, I've had to be quite inventive to expand on those ones as much as I can, both analog and digital ones. Of course, having 70 SEMS available for unattended operation now does give people in some areas, like northwest of England, I'm thinking of, which is very crowded population, amateur population wise, and therefore has a higher instance of gateways than anywhere else.
That was one of the big wins. That was one of the big wins, really, Steve.
Yes,
when you think about
absolutely.
The unattended operation on 70. We really, were Ofcom we're really happy to accommodate us there, and the MOD, of course, who are the keepers of the band, if you like, the primary users. And we were able to a lot of careful consideration to get unattended operation there, which just opened up the whole thing.
With careful use of the bands, we've managed to gain an awful lot, I think, through this. And going forward, after the initial surge where everyone was just applying for everything under the sun sort of thing, it has, settled down now. Some days I don't get any applications. Others,
it sounds like
I get 2 or 3.
It sounds like you kept quite busy though.
Yes.
I was going to ask, so with all this increased activity and all the increased applications, have the new license terms and conditions caused any issues for gateways and repeaters?
Not specifically, I don't think. I think most people can understand when I look back at the license that I first had back in 1979 and going forward through BR68 and the lifetime license that came in around about 2005, 2006 to what we now have. Apart from the glitch in the guidance notes, the details within that document now that applies to all classes of license. That's the important thing. It's much easier to understand than it used to be. Under the when intermediates and foundation licensees first came along, they had their own license terms and conditions documents, and they didn't tie in, across the board. And I remember going up to Alan Betts one day, and he was sat with a big Word document open with columns for each license, and he was trying to produce one license that reflected all three, sort of thing. And I'm thinking, good luck, Alan.
Which is effectively what we've got now. Of
what
course,
we've got now, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the primary aims, I think, Ofcom wanted to simplify the whole process to help themselves, apart from anything else.
You have to remember also, David, that prior to 2 years ago, when we issued an NOV for the first time, it went out via Ofcom. So we created it. It got sent to Ofcom. Ofcom then sent the thing out by email. And then renewals, we would renew the NOV and a copy would go to Ofcom. They didn't actually do the issuing, we did. With the sort of, replacement of the NOVs, Ofcom don't actually get involved in 90-odd% of them now. It's left solely in our ballyrick, and we just got to get on with it. So, people are quite surprised these days. I get this as quite a common comment after they've been issued with an FAC. Gosh, that was quicker than I thought it would be. Yeah, now you've got to go out and purchase the gear and put the antenna up and all the rest of it. Yeah, over to you.
Well, I think I know you do a lot of work, and a lot of RSGB committees do a lot of work, but it's worth reminding everybody watching this that you are volunteers for the RSGB, and you do this all for free for the good of the hobby. So on behalf of all those people who've enjoyed all of the facilities that you enable, thank you very much to both of you and all of your colleagues, of course, on the ETCC for all of the work that you do.
We do have a bit of a laugh behind the scenes.
Yes, M8MDJ, not probably a question, but more of a comment to strengthen what John was saying about the 12.5 kilohertz apart. He just says that while not using 100 watts to access a repeater on your doorstep is a good idea, and in turn accessing repeaters all over the UK without realising it, especially if the repeaters are only 12.5 kilohertz apart. So I think that's a good point. Thank you for that. Terry G3VFC asked, what is a Tetra gateway? I think that was on one of your slides, Steve, sorry.
Tetra gateways are, Tetra is a system that will use a single frequency, but it's split up into time slots. So what it can do is it can receive on one time slot and transmit on a different time slot. So it appears to sort of be on the same frequency, therefore making it easier to less filtering is required if you're using a single frequency Tetra. You can have dual frequency Tetra like a normal conventional repeater as well. But a Tetra gateway can also, as well as re-radiating stuff on a different time slot, it can actually also be connected into the internet as well. So whatever it's received goes into the internet, and whatever comes out gets retransmitted as well. So it does both functions, but single frequency operation.
This clever digital stuff where with time slots you can receive and transmit on the same frequency, which doesn't sound right, but you can.
Yeah.
It's great, and of course it's very efficient then, a very efficient use of the spectrum.
Yeah.
I hope that helps you there, Terry. Now, Alan, I'm guessing you may not be able to answer this individually, but maybe you can tell him how to get in touch. Alan M0AQC says, hi chaps, enjoy the show. My question is, my NOV expires in September. Do I need to apply for an FAC? His call again is M0AQC, but maybe he needs to direct that to you by email?
No, he can just go in and ask for a review of his NOV, but he'll then be issued with an FAC to replace it. If he goes on to, hold on, if I go back to here, on the forms page.
We can't see your shared slides anymore, I'm afraid, Steve.
hold on.
Would it be on the RSGB ETCC?
Yeah, if go onto the forms page on the UK repeaters page, and trying to find it. Repeater. I can't read it my own writing here. Terrible, isn't it? Oh, it's the second option.
Okay, well, we can't see that. So what was the website again? Is ukrepeaters.net?
ukrepeater.net.
ukrepeater.net, yeah, singular. Yeah. So ukrepeater.net.
Forms and then Forms Central.
Forms and then Forms Central.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alan will know what it is. So
okay, I hope that helps you, Alan.
So one thing that we did after the license change 2 years ago is I ran through all the gateways, all the packet weight stuff, because they were on a 12-month renewal cycle. So they all got reissued with FACs more or less straight away. Repeaters were on 3 years, so there was a bit of a delay in getting them all onto. There's majority of them have gone on to FACs, but there's still a few still on NOVs. But just when it comes up for renewal, just apply for renewal as you did before.
Very straightforward process, really. If he's got an NOV at the moment, it will be an FAC will be issued. There's no issue at all.
Yeah,
right.
And he'll also get an invite letter, email sent to him as well ahead of time.
Lovely. Okay, thank you. Another question. All I've got is a name of Steve. He's watching on BATC, who says, are there any usage stats for this technology? Because it may help to protect our band allocations if there was a record kept of usage.
I'm not aware of any.
I'm not either.
There
I guess
are
especially
websites.
analog ones, probably there would be no easy way of doing that, would there?
Yeah, digital. There may be some stats available digitally from the various networks. You know, the DV Phoenix, Scotland, all that, and Brandmesh, but there wouldn't be anything for analog at all that I'm aware of.
Okay. So
there are various websites that show what gateways or repeaters are logged into their service.
Yeah.
But they're independent of us.
And they're going to have some kind of digital logging of some kind, aren't they?
Yeah.
Okay, but thanks for that. I hope that helps, Steve. Stephen, again, no another name other than Stephen M45. Can I have an APRS iGate at my home address under my own license and call sign?
Yes. But only up to 5 watts ERP.
Okay. Yeah, as your table showed.
That's the key. That's the key thing to remember. Under 5 watts can be under your own call sign. You don't. Yeah.
That was a very good table, Steve. Is that also on one of the websites that you've got?
Yeah, it's in our guide to repeater licensing. It's available all the time. I go back.
It's under guidance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That table. Yeah. It comes up on the website when you go to apply as well, so you get to see straight away. We actually do handle loosely beacon applications, but it's one thing I don't get involved in. But there we go.
Okay.
They'll come through us as well.
Thank you. That's lovely to see. That's really useful. Okay, Jim G5AFL, who's on your committee and actually a member of our Norfolk Amateur Radio Club here locally as well. He says that All-Star publish stats for gateways, but these are ephemeral. Sorry if I've got that wrong. So when a gateway is rebooted, the stats are lost, unfortunately. So I guess to answer Steve's question, that's as near as we get really on that. Terry G3VFC comes back and says, so is DMR a Tetra system?
No. DMR is digital mobile radio.
And so that doesn't use that same time slicing that you were saying on the same frequency that you were talking about.
It uses time slots, but DMR uses 2 time slots, whereas Tetra uses 4.
And consumes lots of bandwidth.
It's very wide band. It's quite wide band, yeah. Whereas DMR is narrowband. It's narrowband.
Yeah.
12.5.
Tetra's not very popular with us.
Right.
Well, it's intended for, if you like, professional radio use. It's used by the emergency services mainly.
I was going to say the services used to use them, certainly, didn't they?
Yeah, Airwave, the main emergency services system, uses Tetra.
Okay, so from, again, I'm sorry, no name here, G4CCC though says, could you please clarify whether 70 centimetre analog repeaters should now be 12.5 kilohertz or 25 kilohertz spec? The band plan appears to indicate that 70 sems is now 12.5 kilohertz spacing. Should existing ones be changed?
Yes, over time, if possible.
We're not really chasing it too much at the moment, but eventually we would hope.
Yeah.
12.5, yeah.
And I was going to ask you, say over time, so Steve or John, would you then approach when the repeater is renewed, or are you going to tell them when it should be changed or reviewed?
When the FAC comes up for renewal, it will state bandwidth on that. The other thing to bear in mind, we've made provision for wider split repeaters now. So traditionally, a lot of the 25 kilohertz stuff on 70 sems repeaters was the 1.6 meg split ones, which also tended to suffer with interference from low power devices, remote controls and God knows what else. So we've now included some 5 meg splits. Leave the transmitters where they are, that's fine, but now they can receive 5 megs above that, up in the 438 bit, well away from all the low power device stuff. And then similarly 23 sems, which I think was traditionally a 6 meg split, we've just been processing applications with a 40 meg split. In other words, much easier to filter and cheaper to buy the filters for.
Yeah,
So,
if you've ever played with 1.6 meg shift repeaters on 70 sems, you'll know all about the challenges. Yeah.
It does sound tight, that, doesn't it? Okay, thank you. If you have been waiting to ask a question or make a comment, we're coming towards the end of the questions that I've got now, so please do it right now, either on BATC or on YouTube messaging. Steve asked another question. Are digital repeaters for TV allowed in the 146 to 147 megahertz band?
There are no repeaters in the 146, 147 meg band. There is an R-band digital TV in there, but there are no repeaters.
We don't issue anything in 146 to 147.
No.
Basically, because Ofcom used this wonderful phrase, nothing the same as what you're using now, sort of thing. So
it's
not
experimental,
more of the same, basically.
So
also, remember that it terminates in October of every year, and so the FAC would be limited to months, not necessarily 3 years. It would terminate on October the 1st every time.
And those are all NOVs at the moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
And remember, it's full licensees only can apply for an NOV to operate in that band as well. So, okay, you could say, well, we could have the receiver in the 144, 146 and the transmitter in 146 to 147. But what happens if Ofcom turn around and say, sorry guys, we won't be able to renew the extension.
Yeah,
for another year.
It very much depends on commercial requirements. That band will at some point probably disappear back into commercial use. But the original question, I think, mentioned digital TV. There are point-to-point digital TV experiments going on there, but no repeaters.
Yeah, they're very specific, aren't they? I think maybe the British Amateur Television Club, of which we're actually streaming this to. And in fact, Steve, who asked the question, is watching it on the BATC website, so they might be able to offer some insight into what might be coming. Finally, after going through all of these things tonight, as well as many people watching already, repeater and gateway keepers and everything, I'm sure we might have enthused some others to have a go. So how long after submitting an application do you think would it take roughly before they receive their frequency assignment certificate?
How many minutes?
Well, was it
Yes.
minutes? Is it minutes?
Yes, can be.
Do you ever sleep, you guys?
If there's a frequency available and we're there to process it, it'll be pretty quick.
Really? Is that quick, is it?
Oh
Yeah,
yes,
it can be, yes.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's usually next day or something like that. But
Normally
it can-
within 24 hours.
Yeah.
Well,
We don't actually have a sort of service level agreement, but I personally always try to deal with them as quick as possible, because my short-term memory is not brilliant. So if I leave it too long, I'm thinking, what was it you asked for?
yeah. Well, I think, as I said once a little bit earlier, and I know, how many of you are there, by the way, on the ETCC team, roughly?
Oh, that's a good question.
Well,
Is it 8 of us? Yeah.
10,
Yeah,
8,
about
10,
8
yeah.
of us. Yeah,
Well, look,
about 8.
and representing various parts of the UK, I know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for all the work that you do. And of course, thank you very much for this evening.
Thank you.
Thank
Really
you.
good. And thank you to you at home as well for all the questions. And that does conclude this webinar. And a thanks once again to Steve Morton, F4VTF, and John McCulloch, GI4BWM. For more information on the ETCC, please visit rsgb.org/ETCC. Well, we hope you've enjoyed this Tonight to Date and that you'll be able to join us next time. And why not also note a date in your diary for the RSGB online AGM, which this year is on Saturday, April the 18th at 10 a.m. For more information, see rsgb.org/AGM. And if you'd like to see details of future webinars or watch recordings of previous programs in the series, please visit rsgb.org/webinars, where you can also send us comments and feedback. And if you subscribe to the RSGB's YouTube channel, you'll also be notified of all upcoming Tonight at 8 webinars, as well as other new videos and presentations from the Society on a wide range of amateur radio topics. Thanks again for joining us this evening, and until next time, this is David G7ERP signing off and clear. Bye-bye.